Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Lowenstein Sandler, and in a few cases, welcome for the very first time. This is VentureCrushFG. I'm Meredith Bouchard. I'm a senior partner in our emerging companies and venture capital group. I specialize in M&A for venture-backed companies, so that's buying and selling them. And today, we're really excited about our programming. We are joined by Lindsay Gazowski and Juliet Pryor, and we're going to chat about leading through building culture and talent. We are also joined by four-time Grammy nominee Emily King, who's going to share some of her music with us. A few things before we get started, a number of which are going to focus on the Zoom chat. So if you're in the room with us, there's a QR code that you can scan. We encourage you to do that. You may want to join that Zoom chat, but do turn off the audio so it doesn't mess up audio in the room. Links to panelist bios are going to be there. Information about our Venture Crush programming is going to be there, including our pod programming, which we did before this. We spent an hour with some really amazing founders. We have room for more to join, so we'll have information there. If you have ideas for great companies to join, let us know there as well. Share your own LinkedIn information there. We're going to be meeting next time on January 14th to talk about market scaling and product market fit with Jeff Busgang, Karen Page, and Elliot Robinson. You'll have information about that in the Zoom chat. Today, I want to thank some of our colleagues who helped with research on our amazing panelists. That's Michelle, Keith, and Lizzie. Also our events team, Jenny, Ginny, Angela, Elsie, Owen, Kristen, Christina, Haley, Christine, Elena, Anthony, Britt, and Kerry. We couldn't do any of this without you. It's also a really exciting week for Lowenstein Sandler because we have elevated a bunch of new partners. They're all amazing. Ed and I get to work with all of them, but wanted to call out a couple in particular. Laura Cicerelli in our Emerging Companies and Venture Capital group, who does very much what we do, representing startup companies through their full life cycle, and also Raquel Smith in our debt finance group, who works with us all the time on venture debt transactions. We're so excited that you've joined the partnership. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Ed. I'll be back up here in a little bit after we hear from Ed and Emily.
Thank you. And thank you all for joining us. I'm going to start on a less joyous note. So Venture Crush isn't just an event series, it's a community. And over the 25 years that we've been doing Venture Crush, many of you have shown up repeatedly, and you've gotten to know one another, and you've expanded each other's networks, built friendships, sparked new business relationships, sometimes fundraising, hiring customers. There are several folks who met their M&A buyers at one of our events, which also makes us happy. We are always happy to welcome your friends as well. If there's someone you think we should be including in our inclusive Venture Crush community, we want to hear about it. Feel free to suggest them anytime. Feel free to bring friends. Feel free to record in progress, whatever you want. Whether your ties here turn into close friendships or simply a familiar smile across the room, we do value this community, and we notice when you're not with us. Because we are a community, I also want to share that we recently lost one of our longtime community members, Rob Robinson, who has been attending Venture Crush for more than a dozen years, especially when we hosted live music. Rob held a PhD, so Dr. Rob, founded and ran Channel D Pure Music, a profitable, respected, bootstrapped software company built on the strength of dozens of his patents. I first met him because I am a passionate user of his audio software and a little bit of a stereo geek. Only later did I learn that he was a client of our firm and that we had helped him procure those dozens of patents. He kept our team busy. He was the kind of person who would be upfront enjoying Emily King's music tonight and would then email me afterwards with enthusiastic notes of her great performance and some photos of mushrooms he recently foraged. We simply wanted to acknowledge his passing and to thank all of you for showing up for one another in ways big and small. Our deepest sympathies go to Rob and his family, but we do care. This is a community. You're going to recognize people that you've seen in this space, in this community, when you're out elsewhere, and you should say hi and say, I think I know you from Venture Crush. That's part of the point of this networking. It's part of the point of being, in community with one another here. Because we are also now approaching the holiday season, and this is our last event before the holidays, we not only wanted to wish everyone a really peaceful holiday, but again, because we have focused for a really long time on being equitable and inclusive, we also think a lot about peace. And we think a lot about people who are overlooked. And I feel like a lot of you were overlooked by FIFA in their Peace Prize. And so I wanted to personally confer upon all of you here today the first annual Global Venture Crush Peace Prize. And you get to say that you were in the first group to ever have been awarded this now annual, fuck global, universal Peace Prize. And you can say, it's just about peace, it's not political. You could say that you were in the class that was awarded this with civil rights icon Maya Wiley, who's sitting in the penultimate row there. I think you should be this is one of the great honors of your lives.
So now on to the rest of our programming. I'm gonna do my best to introduce both of you a little bit, and then we're gonna ask you a lot more questions about your background and get into some conversation. So, Juliet, you are the child of civil rights activists, and we're starting at the beginning. Okay. And you attended Fisk, which is an amazing HBCU that we're going to get back to a little bit later in your biography.
All right.
And after that, Georgetown, with dual degrees in law and foreign service.
Yes.
And you've practiced as a lawyer at a number of major corporations.
Hard to keep a job.
We can talk about that, but including,
No.
and we hadn't talked about this before, you were at US Foods, which is one of the first companies I ever sold.
Really? We
In
never talked about that.
2007. Yeah.
Okay.
Currently, you're the chief legal officer, and you have a couple other roles, if I can find in my notes. You are a VP and the corporate secretary for Lowe's, which is a Fortune 50 company. You also have a long list of companies that you've, nonprofits that you've served on the board of. You're currently also on the board of another public company in the Fortune 200. And I said we'd get back to Fisk. You chair the board of trustees, and you serve on that along with our friend Ed Zimmerman down there.
Who's got a great tie on today.
I do have my Fisk tie, and we do have the president of Fisk University in the second row, Dr. Genia
Clark, yeah.
So thank you so much for being here.
And I believe you ran that presidential search process as well.
I was a part of the search committee, yes.
Yeah. So you have a lot of experience building teams, managing teams through various challenges, and a lot to talk about how you built cultures in these organizations. So
Look
excited
forward
to
to it.
dig into that with you. Lindsay, this is going to be a little bit more long-winded.
That's fine.
So we won't start at your birth, but we'll start that you are a 17-year-old in the Midwest, and you got into Dartmouth, and you're filling out your forms about who your freshman roommate should be, and this will go to music because you're supposed to fill out what kind of music do you like to listen to when you study. And you understood that was not actually a question about what you like to listen to when you study, but a question about who do you want your roommate to be and how do you think they would answer this question. And so you answer it with the artist you like, but not a popular choice for teenagers in the 1990s, which was Bob Dylan. I also answered that way. And so we were freshman roommates. Okay. And you have been my really teammate ever since. And I wanted to share a story briefly that we haven't talked about in a long time. Dartmouth is very, very Greek, but defines Greek very broadly. And we can actually talk later if anyone's interested in ways I think it makes the campus much more inclusive. We were in the same sorority. You quickly rose to leadership. You were the president. I bristled at leadership within the sorority, and yet every term I found myself with a new position on the executive committee because you said, if I'm leading, I need you in the room with me. Yep. You understood the team dynamic, and then you went to a meeting, all of the presidents of the various Greek houses, sororities, fraternities, co-ed, everything would get together, and I guess you needed to pick a new leader for that organization, and you led a movement there that it shouldn't actually be a president. It should be someone who was not a president of a house. And you came back and said, Meredith, you are now the leader of Greek life on campus. And I don't know that I've ever thanked you for putting me in that position of leadership and impact. I interfaced with the administration on behalf of Greek life. It was amazing, but I think before you even got into your career, you were thinking about how to create the right teams and put the right people together. So that was very impactful for me. You, after Dartmouth, you went to UNC, your all but dissertation in sociology. I followed you to North Carolina. That is why I went to Duke for law school. You ran away when you realized you were going to have a very successful career in academia, and that wasn't what you wanted.
Right.
You had a brief stint in corporate life at McMaster Carr, and before we knew it, you were already re-enrolled to get your MBA at Kellogg. Went into private equity a little bit and just kept getting calls to become a recruiter because of that background in sociology mixed with private equity. You co-own a boutique recruiting business focused on finding leaders for growth stage companies. In addition to that, you are the founder of a company that creates software for evaluation of talent for similar type roles and has a lot of broad applicability. You've built your own team there, and so you're really, everything is focused now on understanding team dynamics and getting the right people in the right rooms. So I'd like to start with that, with the Crucible, with the company that does talent assessment, because you've actually started to quantify what we should look for in leaders, but also in members of teams. Could you talk a little bit about those characteristics?
Sure. So the reason that we developed the Crucible in the first place is because there are a ton of assessments on the market, most of which are terrible, not statistically valid, often biased. And I was very frustrated that people were using tools that weren't helping them build great teams, and specifically weren't helping them build great teams for the future and that will be robust as things move forward. So we looked at a kitchen sink's worth of potential attributes that one might want to measure, and came down to 36 different things that we look at. But some of the most surprising that people tend to undervalue in these organizations are things like empathy and optimism, intellectual curiosity, pattern recognition. These are the types of skills that allow people to see what could be, see what is, understand each other, and help to figure out how to apply that to what they're doing. There are a lot of other attributes that you want specifically when you're thinking about high growth organizations, things like urgency and passion. My favorite distinction that we make is between competitiveness and disdain for losing, because there's a lot of people you know out there who are competitive. They can be home run hitters. You really need people on your team that have disdain for losing, because they will make sure that everyone succeeds. That if you set a goal, that it will happen. And finding people who can encapsulate some of those attributes are really critical when putting together a group that can not just weather, a minor storm or achieve a goal that seems tangible, but to figure out what to do when everything's falling apart, what to do when there's a shock to the system, and how to, not just get to 10 million, to 50 million, go to 100 million, go past that.
What types of things did you do in building the tool to overcome the bias that you articulated exists in pre-existing tools? I know I'm not supposed to be asking.
I love this.
Yeah, no, great question. So we took a sociological approach to it as opposed to a psychological approach, which, apologies to all the organizational psychologists that are out there. We started with, show me people who are good at things. Show me people who build great businesses. Talk to me about what defines success for a variety of top leaders. And that's why we got to this kitchen sink approach of going through and saying, okay, what does that look like? So we started with what works as the starting point, and then crafted questions to try to address what that is, and did so not just to ask a single question, but asking somewhere between 5 and 13 questions for each element that we're trying to assess. Then we went out and spent 2.5 years getting population sets where we made sure that there's various groups that tend to be underrepresented were overrepresented in these samples, and that the population means were not different than the general population mean, but more so were not different than when you selected for the group of people that tended to get these jobs in the first place.
Got it.
And specifically looked to make sure we weren't biasing for people who had experience in a venture-backed organization or a private equity-backed organization, that we weren't biasing for people who had experience as a C-suite leader, that it looked at what are the skills and characteristics that are tied to success, not prior experience. So we went through, and there were some questions that we had to go rewrite, and there were elements that we discovered had absolutely no bearing on success, but did make the test less valid, and went through and iterated and iterated and iterated until the numbers made me feel confident that we weren't putting people at a disadvantage, and in fact were supporting the things that were going to highlight people of all backgrounds and all experiences to get the right people in the right seats. So, thank you.
Thank you.
So you
Juliet.
talked about managing through crisis, and Juliet, that's something you and I have talked about a little bit, that you've seen organizations through crises. How do you think about assessing whether or not someone's got what it takes to get through the crisis, and how do you think about managing a team through that kind of a hard time and keeping them engaged when it's hard?
Yeah, I think through what I'll characterize as mini crises or mini challenges, you can see how people are able to sort of pivot, sustain, manage their way through, to understand those who are not sort of frozen in the face of crisis or otherwise just running for the hills. You're referencing the fact that I, early in my career, was in a company that was highly leveraged, wound up being delisted by NASDAQ before NASDAQ had fully developed its delisting process. We went to the pink sheets, then we restated our financials, filed bankruptcy, sold all the assets through bankruptcy. I stayed for the whole thing. It was just a series of crises over several. You know, that's when I learned. This is now 30 years ago.
Emily said it's okay to end a friendship. Why did you not? You should just end that friendship.
I probably learned more in business as well as about myself through those series of unfoldings. I think about people that we were all there together when we thought we were going to get very rich in that particular deal. It was a startup after the telecom, the big telecom breakup. And I tell people I could wallpaper my bathroom with the value of the equity from that. But
Sorry,
what?
since Meredith waxed rhapsodic about her freshman year roommate, I'm just going to tell my sophomore year housemate, you can
can
go
sit
ahead
here.
and
But
take
you
that
these
seat.
are our
You
Ty.
gotta move our stuff onto the
They're
floor,
not
and that's
coming.
fine.
They're
You're
not
done.
allowed to come back there. Come on in, Ty.
Make yourself
Put her
at
stuff
home.
on the floor.
And welcome. I'm sorry, Juliet.
No, it's fine. You're like, why did he do that? But you've known him a long time. Yeah. Yeah, so stayed because, it was a way to learn. Figuring out who else is able to navigate and manage through crisis, I think it's something that you're testing through people. Through the organizations that I've been in, there hasn't been one that I've been in where there hasn't been some form of a crisis. Some bigger than others. And by the time we hit the crisis, I usually have a sense of who on the team is going to be able to sort of keep their heads about themselves and help us sort of manage through those things. So you learn it through individual experiences. I wish I had some type of assessment like this for it, but we learn it through smaller crises and how they're able to continue to move forward.
How do both of you figure out who you can trust in the moment, because it is dynamic, that is a changing situation, and when people are expected to run for the hills, you need to figure out on whom you can rely. How do you figure that out, both of you?
I think you're assessing for trust and relationship building from the very beginning. I tend to build teams. I've served as a chief legal officer 5 different times in different companies in different industries. And I tend to build teams that's a combination of some of the people that were there when I got there, some people that I've worked with in other places to bring in, and then some third element of folks that we found because of a talent skill that we needed. And so my role as leader is to really drive this notion of transparency and authenticity so that we build this trusting kind of space and we have a sense of who's on that team beyond the skill set, so that when the crisis hits or whatever the challenge is, that we are dealing with folks that you know that you can sort of lean on, depend on, and often you're leaning and depending on them to take on tasks that perhaps they've never done before, right? Because the other people, the scared people ran away. There's still stuff to be done. There's the run the business stuff, and then there's this new challenge. And so you've got to be able to lean on those folks. And I start building that as soon as I get into an organization, the trust, the relationship, the testing of their nimbleness, resiliency, as early as possible.
That was actually a question that our founders wanted us to ask you, was about authenticity, and do you think it's at odds with growth, or can you embrace authenticity in a fast-growing company? So if you could talk a little bit more about that.
Can you embrace authenticity? So I've never been a founder. I don't know how to operate in organizations where I'm not able to be authentic. I spent a lot of time early in my career not being authentic. By that I mean, I thought that there was a persona that I needed to present, and I started my career in a large corporate setting before I went to a startup. And I thought that to be, and it was IBM, to be an IBMer, I needed to downplay anything that didn't fit into a profile. I didn't tell them that I had kids because I didn't want to be excluded from a business trip where they were going to decide for me that I maybe couldn't take that 3 nights away. Like I played a role. I wore a mask, if you will. And so what I learned as I moved beyond that experience, especially in the startup and where I had to build teams, is that I couldn't build deep enough relationships with people when we needed to be in the trenches together if we hadn't gotten to know each other at some level as humans. We didn't need to braid each other's hair, but we needed to have some level of connection beyond the subject matter expertise or knowledge. And in a lot of these spaces, I would find myself, as the only female, the only Black person, perhaps both. And so helping those other folks get to know me on a human level, to understand the commonality of our human experience, meant that I needed to really bring my real self and invite them to sort of connect with me on that kind of a human level, so that while we were going through the bankruptcy, the company being sold to KKR, that's what you worked on, I'm now understanding, yep. All of those things, that we had the type of rapport that we could navigate those spaces. I think it's critical, especially when you're in a really challenging startup, entrepreneurial, very fast-paced environment. I would think it would be critical.
I want to pause on one thing that you said, and then I have a question for Lindsay. You said that you didn't talk about being the mother of small children or children at the time because you thought that people would edit you out of opportunities. They wouldn't bring you the opportunity. And I don't want anyone to raise their hand in this room, but I'm sure lots of people in this room, if they think about it, they either did that or they were in a room where it was clear that as we were talking about opportunities, someone shifted away from that because this person had small children at home and this person was the mom, not the dad, generally speaking. And I would just challenge us to pause and actually say something about that in the future. Feel free to reference back to this conversation, but when you're showing up authentically and when you're trying to make sure that you're going to work at a place where you can say, I'm going to talk about my kids to my colleagues and not worry that by so doing I will deprive myself of opportunities. Lindsay, as a recruiter, how do you convince candidates that they're going into a place where that can be true, number one, and number two, because you recruit into private equity-backed companies, how do you sleep at night lying about that?
Well, that's what I was going to say, that often I have to make sure it's true if I'm going to convince someone it's true. To Mary's question about authenticity, I was surprised by the phrasing of the question, because it's not how can you be authentic in a high-growth organization. For me, it's how can you not be authentic in a high-growth organization, because it creates institutional distrust and anxiety if people perceive that their leaders aren't being authentic. But with that, in recruiting, it's making sure recruiting's not about trying to get a specific person into a role. The best recruiters try to figure out what the best match is between the company and the available talent. And so if there's a company that doesn't value family life or wouldn't support someone who they perceive to not be able to go on a business trip, that's not a place I want to put someone where that matters to them. If there's an organization, and I'm not recruiting for them, but that I'm familiar with, that requires people to have 3 meals a day in the office and tends to work 16-hour days and things like that, it's not a great environment for men or women who want to be actively involved in their children's lives.
Or in their own life.
Fair. And so that would not be a place that I would put someone, but there'd be a lot of questions around what are you as a candidate looking for in your next environment? What speaks to you? What makes you feel most motivated in trying to deliver your best? I think there's some piece of that in the mismatch in desires between flexible scheduling and being out of the office some days a week that certain candidates want, and the move to go back into office full time that a lot of organizations are excited about, because that mismatch is causing some discord for certain candidates, and it's just not the right fit. And that's okay. You don't want to shoehorn someone into a place where it's not going to be an amazing fit for them, because they won't deliver their best. The deals tend to go bad, and they become part of the statistic of upwards of 50% of executives being replaced in private equity-backed organizations. It's upwards of 70 for CFOs, by the way.
Why did they take the job?
Because there's one, they don't think it's going to be them.
These are math people, and they know the odds are 7 out of 10 times.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Excellent.
also they see the growth potential. And
It's
so,
the upside.
Yeah, you see the upside and you believe in yourself. Why do you think you would be the one that isn't happening? And look, there, you replace the last guy. Why are they going to replace me too?
Lindsay, when we were prepping for this, you shared a story. I'm hoping you can share more broadly about a team that wasn't working and how you looked at and diagnosed what's the mismatch in culture here.
Yeah, so we were brought in to do a team assessment on a group that, on paper, I mean, their results seemed to be performing okay. It wasn't a scenario that things were on fire or that they were going to have to, pivot or anything like that. But the fund couldn't figure out why the team seemed a bit dysfunctional. Their results weren't getting to where anyone projected they should be, and all of the ancillary factors would imply that they should be doing better than everything that was coming out. And so we went in and assessed the team, and it turned out that they had one executive, their CFO, who was a phenomenal leader, but a ridiculously poor fit within that team, because he wanted to be the driver and the decision maker. He wanted to move at a certain pace. He was someone who was highly competitive, but also had an absurd disdain for losing. He maxed out on a lot of the criteria. He wasn't necessarily super optimistic, but had low EQ. There were a number of components there that, the type. The rest of the team worked really well together, but they were not necessarily hard drivers. They weren't pushing forward in these ways. And we went back to the fund and said, well, you sort of have to figure out what to do, but your CFO is detrimental to the team. I know you guys just hired him, you like him a lot, he's doing good stuff in there, but the team's not gonna work if you continue this way. They brought the information to the CEO, who is also the founder of the business, who thought on it and came back and said, actually, you should replace me and build a team around the CFO. This is where we need to head for the future. We need someone with that level of energy and who can push forward. We need someone who's going to take the, take the reins and push this thing to that next level. And the fund was sharing this feedback with us because they were going to replace the founder at some point anyway. This wasn't a scenario where they thought they would ride with him all the way to exit, but they didn't think they'd do it now, and they didn't think it would be so easy to have him raise his hand and be like, put me in an advisory role. But it was clear based on the data that something had to change, and it had to be either that you continue to rebuild around the team that had been there that was probably going to hit their ceiling at some point soon, or to create a whole new team around this CFO that they like, one person. They did. They brought in a new CEO, they brought in a new head of sales, and the company is a rocket ship again. And it's pretty incredible because you have to think about, are you building the team that exists or are you building for the future? And what does that mean for what this organization is going to become? But it really does take a pretty self-aware founder to be able to say, nope, it's not me.
I think it also speaks to when you're leading a team, making the decision about someone that's not a fit. I mean, that could have gone the other way, but however it plays out. But when there's a misfit in the team and there's a flaw in the team dynamic, if it can't be fixed through some work of the team, somebody's got to go.
Right.
It hurts everybody to have the dysfunction in the team, and to sort of. I've never had a situation where there's dysfunction in the team. You know where the problem is, and you're waiting it out, and you go, "Oh, I'm glad I waited." You always waited too long. Yeah. You always waited too long. I try to do it faster and faster, and I wish I could do it even sooner. Yeah.
So if you have a culture you like, but you want to aim for something different, more growth, it sounds like it can be problematic to jump too far, to bring someone on who's just not a fit with the team. Is there an incremental approach toward changing from where you are to where you want to go in terms of team dynamic?
Yes, I think that one of the most salient issues in this case was the fact that the team that existed were people who needed to take information back, think on it, and then be able to have an answer. And there are people who think very quickly and make quick decisions that do it that way. The person they brought on was someone who liked to react in the moment and wanted to talk things out, and that wasn't a dynamic that worked with the team. So there were other elements that made it that much more of a mismatch. But when you're thinking about developing a talent strategy, it does have to be a strategy. It has to be something where you're not just saying, okay, we didn't like this, so we're going to go the other direction and hire the opposite of what we had. Or I want someone who's extremely high growth, so I'm going to go hire someone who grew something from 10 to 400 million and expect that they're going to do it again. It's having a strategy around what am I doing now? Where do we want to be? What is it going to take to get there? What are the roles we need to place? And how do we find people that maybe not purely incrementally, but can take us along those steps to get there, and to do so in a way that continues to align with the team, or that we need to blow it all up and find the group that's going to get us there if the team that exists today doesn't have the skills and talents needed to make that happen.
Juliet, you talked about recruiting people into this kind of team and telling them, okay, I need you to come move to Charlotte. And I also kind of need to know that if we miss a bonus because you've done a fine job, but the company's having a bad quarter or year or whatever, you're going to stick around and not just be coin operated. How, in the context of these kinds of changes, do you get comfortable and get them comfortable that this is the kind of person who's going to accept that offer, actually move themselves, maybe their family, to Charlotte, and stick around if you miss a bonus one year?
I think it's about ensuring that you're getting people who have some level of intellectual curiosity, appetite around the actual business, and not just around the title, the salary, it's a Fortune 50 company or whatever those things are. Because you got to understand the business strategy, the obstacles for the business, where we aspire to be. Does our strategy make sense? Do we have a chance at making it? And yes, there's a possibility that, I don't know, tariffs may happen. We're the 5th largest importer in the United States at Lowe's, so this is not been an easy year, right? So that something may happen externally that the personal economic objective may not happen in that year, but it doesn't mean that it's a flawed business, a flawed opportunity. And so it's really about ensuring that they understand the bigger picture, because there have been bonuses that have been missed, paid at low percentages or nothing. That happens, or stock that's sitting much lower than you'd like it to be. But people will make the decision to stay and keep marching on if they believe in it, believe in the team, believe in the strategy, et cetera. So it's recruiting for something broader than just their particular skill and they're making the number.
What do you do to build the trust that strengthens their resolve to stick around if we have an irrational president imposing helter-skelter, crazy, economically asinine tariffs? For instance, hypothetically.
Like if that were to happen. I think it goes back to this notion of transparency and being in something for a longer haul, for a greater purpose, to be able to navigate what is a difficult season, but not necessarily the whole story, right? I think it's about getting people to do that. Now, on the flip side, you were talking about people coming back to work. So we're a company that's now back in the office 100%. And I have lost some talent this year because they could go someplace else and have 3 days a week. And so it becomes, harder to recruit. But I'm glad that we've made a decision as to what we're going to be. So now when I'm recruiting, I'm saying, here's the deal. This is actually in Charlotte. It's actually in the office, 5 days. If you still want to live in New Jersey, you can work it out on the weekends, but we're here Monday through Friday. Yes, Ed. And just sort of spell it out. So it's not that they're unclear. You're very, very clear about what the expectation is and the commitment is.
And Lindsay, you've gone full remote with your companies.
Yes.
How do you continue to have a team dynamic?
Yeah, it's a challenge on a daily basis. So we have an exceptionally robust Slack channel system that people are talking about, not just their, work problems, but we have parents at Falcon, we have pets of Falcon, we have, there's all these things, and it's the recruiting team. The Crucible is also fully remote, but it's a much smaller team, and it's a lot easier to manage when you've got a bunch of data people that are excited about data things and can get together and do that. But recruiters are inherently social people. And so we meet 4 times a year as a team. We have regional meetups. I took 2 of my teammates out to lunch today. So we try to get together as much as possible, but it's also about being intentional to get to know one another outside of just, here's the project I'm working on, here's what I'm doing today. We did a lot of things where we had people develop even Zoom backgrounds to share with one another to say, you have to create a Zoom background for somebody else that you think reveals a part of your personality, and then they had to put it behind them for a full day. Like, we're doing silly, frankly, kind of inane things, but just to make sure that we have that same connection that you'd have if you were wandering by someone's desk and saw that they had, a new trinket sitting there. Everyone in the company knows everything about my son. I'm kind of obsessed with him, so that's part of it. But I know everything about their kids too, and we're cheering for their kids when they're applying to colleges, and we're working through people's personal life issues in a way that's probably more robust than we would if we were even in an office, because that sense of connection has to be so much more intentional and so much more fulsome.
Can we talk a little bit about how you are both involved in multiple jobs at the same time? Because you're talking about like being intensely engaged with your colleagues in your recruiting business. Your data and software business that you run is separate, and oh, by the way, you also kind of co-owned, grew, and very lucratively sold a plumbing company, which I'm really not sure how your all but dissertation degree in sociology prepared you for that, but whatever. And Juliet, you seem to serve on like 72 boards, and the amount of time that you spend on the Fisk board, of which you are chair, is also incredibly impressive. So aside from the fact that the two of you have either diagnosed or undiagnosed ADHD, what is it about like needing to just say, yeah, let me add more shit onto my shoulders so that I can, like, how do you manage all of that? And does that make you stronger, weaker?
It's a real juggle. I have people around me who help me with hard things like the word no. And I assess, where I have passion. Like there's no way that I could wait until I retired to be able to serve on the Fisk board. I have deep passion around HBCUs, around Fisk in particular, and I have experiences from other parts of my life that I think that I can contribute. So I got to do that now. Right. So it's that.
Can we pause on that?
Okay.
And we will come back. Why do you have such a deep and urgent, it sounds, passion for Fisk?
Fisk
in
is the
particular and HBCUs more broadly.
Fisk is the first institution of higher learning in Nashville, Tennessee. It was there first. It's the reason that Nashville is called Music City, not country music. It is the Grammy Award-winning Fisk Jubilee singers who 150 years ago did the first world music tour, sang for the Queen of England. And she said, who are these singers? They must be from a city of music. And that was reported, and that's where that began. And then when I was 17, I went to Fisk from New York and graduated from Fisk. Learned a lot about leadership. Have been connected to it for the last, 40 years. And I think it's just so important to this country and this world. So that's why. Yeah. So great passion around the role of HBCUs in our ecosystem of higher learning.
And just one thought, in the founder-only session before this and before Emily King, we talked about internships, and because we have the board chair, someone who works for you on the board, and
He's
the
a great
university
board member.
and the university president here, Fisk internships could be an amazing thing for venture funds, PE funds. I see Catherine is maybe shaking her head. Yeah, like that's a great idea for our debt fund. Yeah, the credit fund. That's a great place to take like Fisk math majors. Maybe you could talk to the president who's sitting right next to you and hire some damn Fisk students. Let's get that. Maybe we could get that rolling in this room of
That would be phenomenal.
amazingly talented people with lots of money and opportunity, because Fisk is a great institution.
Thank you. Thank you for that
You can
commercial.
also donate. You can donate a lot in this room. I know some of you are. We get a bunch of people from Greenwich here. I'm just saying.
Who are
you can do
philanthropic.
it. You can do it.
Do you remember what we were talking about?
Yeah.
What was it?
About ADHD.
Oh, right. My adult daughter sends me articles all the time about, women with ADHD. She's like, Mom, this is so you. So I believe it. She's not in the medical field, but she has diagnosed me because I raised her.
Yeah.
And she's right.
So Lindsay, how do you think about I'm the kind of person who needs to have 3 jobs at the same time or I'm not happy?
I very much have a need to be busy all the time. But I also have a lot of help doing things. None of this works if I don't have people around me that can help. So I've been able to outsource some of the activities that other people have to do, and I've been fortunate enough to be able to focus on things that I find inspiring and interesting because of that. I think the other side of it is that I probably have a sense of irrational confidence that I can solve a problem. And so when I mean, most people would be like, yeah, that test is terrible, go find a different one. And I was like, nope, I'm gonna go build it. That's a silly thing to say, but I felt like I could do it, and if I could do it, someone had to, and if I didn't, who was going to? And so it's putting yourself out there that way.
And that is the founder mentality.
Yeah.
And why plumbing?
Oh, so my cousin, after the Marines, went into plumbing because he racked up entirely too much debt because they gave all sorts of credit cards and fun things to people in the Marines. And so when he got out, he was intending to go be a teacher and couldn't afford it, and so took a job plumbing instead and discovered he was incredibly good at it, and it made a lot of money. So he was working for a plumbing business that the founder was looking to sell, and he asked me if I could help him review the financials to see if it was a good business to buy. We were working through that. The people that he was selling, or he was buying it from, wouldn't sign certain elements like, no, I didn't dump toxic waste on the land of this business, or no, I haven't committed tax fraud. And so
Plumbing business. Of course they've committed tax fraud.
yeah, right. So I said to my cousin, so what would it cost if we just started this from scratch? And he threw out a number that was shockingly low, a 5-figure number. And I said, great, if I fund you and do the structural stuff, the finance, some of the legal things, give me 25%, you run it, and we'll go from there. And so then for several years, I would wake up, my husband was in residency for med school, or post-med school, and that was his second career too, by the way, so it's not like I'm unique in this. That I'd wake up when he went to the hospital at 4:30 in the morning, and I'd sit down and I would manually enter invoices and purchase orders and things like that for a plumbing business. And we grew it from nothing. We were marching in parades in town and grew it and was able to sell it with the help of Mare and her fabulous team here.
This was the first plumbing company we sold, and we sold it to private equity. It was
Yeah.
a great exit.
Yeah.
So Juliet, we've talked about your role as board chair. Can we talk about a specific church chair that I've seen in your home?
Oh, church chair. Okay, got it.
Board chair, church chair.
He just wants to randomly talk about it.
I really want to talk about this, and I think other people are going to understand why.
We'll see. So we were having a FISC search committee meeting at a dinner after a meeting at my home, and you saw this chair. The chair is a very old wooden chair. It's from a basement in a church. And it's like, why is this chair? Like, it was a very modern house, and then there's this chair, right? I have the chair because it's signed by Martin Luther King. And so I'm a fourth generation New Yorker. My father was an aide to someone who was the aide of Martin Luther King. He had several different interactions with Dr. King that were all, kind of interesting. My parents marched and were arrested and did those kinds of things. And at an event here in New York, in Brooklyn, Dr. King was sitting down afterwards, and they were talking. And I don't know why he never explained this. My father wanted Dr. King to sign something, and he asked him to sign the chair that he was sitting in. And so Dr. King flipped the chair over and signed it. And then my dad took it home, which is weird. And
Brilliant, not weird.
and
Brilliant.
then I'm the oldest child, and I'm the person in the family that keeps the stuff. Like, I have a first cousin who was raised with us. I have his albums for the last 30 years. It's moved to 5 states. And he's still considered them his, but they've moved with me. And I've moved the chair and so forth. I finally got it appraised and insured literally this year, but we've had that chair for, I guess, 50 years or something like that, 60 years, yeah. So that's the chair, and it's signed by Dr. King, and it's It's a family treasure. And he geeks out about it.
We just did the thing that Emily did. We're like, we can't follow that.
Well, now you tell your family's Dr. King story.
Right.
And then Lindsay. Sorry.
I love that.
That's a great story. I'm going to go to a darker place. So you mentioned we all wait too long when you realize someone's not right for the team. And those are, as leaders, I imagine some of the hardest conversations you have to have. You don't want to necessarily delve into those conversations, but how do you buoy the rest of a team when you're saying goodbye to someone?
Buoy the rest of the team?
How do you-
Usually the
how do you-
team knows.
They know?
They
It's not
know.
even an issue.
Absolutely.
And they're like,
relief.
when is she gonna like deal with this? And so then when you know, there are rules, right? And so you have the direct conversation with the person who's leaving, you exit, you bring the team together and you say, Susie is no longer with us. She's decided to pursue other opportunities. There's quiet. And I'm sure there's many sidebars after they leave the room, but you don't say much else because you're not allowed to and you don't want to have a lawsuit. But everybody knows. They're like, because what you're doing is you're killing morale. They're carrying the work for her. They're having to deal with her, you know, her toxic way. Whatever the thing is, they're all dealing with it. And you are slowing the whole team down, and so you don't have to say a lot. The other part of it is, I am passionate about giving feedback. And I try to make it actionable and time specific because I want people to know that they're going to know where they stand. And so when the team hears about so-and-so left, they already know where they stand because if I'm doing my part as a leader, I am, that was amazing what you did today. Or I'm saying, when we were in the room with the CEO, remember when he asked and you said this? That was good, but it really would have been great if you had also said that, like, I'm trying to model it very specifically, real time, so that they understand, okay, we've got this thing going. That's my job, leading the team, I think.
That's great.
And I think that to the point of, it's not just that they already know, but it's also that if your investors are saying, okay, we need to remove this person, the rest of the team wants more success. They want to be able to push forward to achieve the goals that they're trying to achieve for themselves and for the company. And having the wrong person on the team often keeps them from doing that, not just the company as a whole.
What if everyone really likes that person? I mean, there are some
Yeah.
people who are like, I am the favorite person in, not me, obviously, but like everybody likes this person. And, you know, maybe they don't perform as well from a like objectively measurable productivity perspective, but they're part of the glue.
You just do it gracefully. No, I'm serious.
Yeah.
I recently demoted the mayor, like the mayor of our team. Like
Yeah.
everybody loves this person, but they weren't doing good work.
We demoted a mayor in New York recently.
Oh,
too.
you did that, yeah. Mine was less famous, which was a signal to them that they should move on, right? But it was a very public step down. Everybody understood it. The leadership wasn't happy. The nice part is like, but you just do it graciously and kindly, but you still have to do it. Like, you can't just be there because people like you. It's not enough.
And there's sometimes where there are these cultural carriers that actually are really important to the team, that they don't produce at the same volume or at the same quality as everyone else, but they truly are important for the team. But you have to assess what are they bringing to the table and know that in the context of your team, not just saying, okay, we put everyone in a rank order and this is the bottom person, we're going to get rid of them. But if someone's not helping the company succeed, the rest of the members of the team really don't want them there either at that level, even if they want to hang out with them after work every day.
Yeah.
You guys are brutal.
Yeah.
You're not wrong, just saying.
If you don't do it, you're being brutal to the whole team.
And to the person in question, because they're
Right.
not allowed to
They're not getting the
succeed either.
feedback. They're going along for whatever period of time, thinking they're
And
this
so-
and they're not.
So, Lindsay, how do you see people stay likable after they've done that?
So I
You
think
mean the
it's-
leader?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's,
because you still want those people
Dislikable.
in Charlotte to stick around when the bonuses get missed. And by the way,
I wanna
not
be
lost
trusted.
on me, that 20
Right.
minutes ago when you said bonuses were missed, you switched to passive voice, which like I totally get, but yeah, it's, you know, but you want to, like, how do you maintain that trust?
I mean, Julia just said it, you're not trusted if you're not doing these things. So it doesn't create the environment where people feel there's a sense of accountability. They don't feel that there's a sense of directness. And it causes others to wonder, even if I tell them, hey, you're doing a great job, and I give them specific examples, if I'm not holding their peers accountable for their actions, they're wondering what I'm not holding them accountable for. And it creates, again, more institutional anxiety and probably leads to people leaving as opposed to the other side. I also, and maybe this is just me, but don't know that leaders need to be liked.
Boom.
You're leading the organization. If you're seeking friends, that's not really the right place to be.
I'm glad you said it. I like when people like me, but I want them to trust me.
Right.
Yeah. So, tech talent. One of the questions that the founders had in the founder-only session was, we desperately want to find more tech talent, especially senior tech talent, and these are earlier stage companies. What's the best way for them to get great top of funnel, and what's the best way for them to magnetically draw people through that funnel before they have real market traction?
That's a really good question. I think that some groups address that by having great relationships in and among communities where they can identify some people early that you can find, you're working with some other founders that know of somebody and have relationships there that can push people through and create some alignment between what your vision for a company is and what that person's looking for. There are some really stellar recruiters that can help do that as well and drive a lot of volume very quickly. There are also a lot of people that may not be domestically based, but that have connections to some groups that are, and groups that tend to be very connected with venture in the venture community. So our tech talent is all in Brazil. And they're pretty phenomenal, but it's cost effective for me because they're much higher talent than I would be able to hire domestically at the stage of the company we were. That said, will they be with us forever? Probably not. As soon as we have the opportunity to have someone that could be in and around us more frequently and where I know the holidays that the country has, that would be lovely.
Or if some rules change in the country.
Correct. Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot happening right now in that space.
Very much so. And so it's a question of making sure you understand the resources you can leverage within your network, but also going out and finding if there are groups and recruiters and other people that have a store of talent or access to more talent, going after those as well.
Are there places people can show up? Like one of our clients some years ago went to a university and of some size and hired the president of the Women in Engineering Club at the university. And lo and behold, when you do that, you end up getting like 5 more people from that organization who want to work, at that startup. And it ended up being like they started to replicate this and trying to go out and proactively identify and recruit the presidents of different clubs. They also wanted to build a diverse workforce. Are there places you can show up and do that, or hacks like that you've seen be effective?
I've seen it work. I think it's more hit or miss though, because you have to be fairly intentional about it. A lot of organizations at universities sometimes create barriers to doing that, where you can't go directly to the clubs. You have to go through various recruiting processes. And that's for good reasons in many cases. But yeah, that there are certain affinity groups that certainly are out there that can be great stores of talent. I think there are also networking communities. There was one for a while in Chicago that had people who were interested in startups So they would meet and play board games and have beers and everything else. And it was just weekday night people that wanted to be in that environment but didn't live on the coast and didn't have access to those communities. And so when people had startup organizations, you could go there, and these were people that had already said, look, I'm willing to take a haircut on comp because I'm excited about that upside.
Very cool.
I think also it strikes me that something, Lindsay, you've done for me and Ed did for all these Fisk students that all of us can do is actively promote talent that we know that's not the right fit for our organization necessarily, but can be a fit for a friend's to say, my roommate is really the right person for this, or hey, I know a lot of kids who need internships. We can be connecting those dots.
Yeah, I would say there's definitely a tech talent shortage, and it's going to be a real challenge. But also, I do think that there are pools of talent in this country that we don't adequately tap into. I think HBCUs are an example of that. There are 100 of them in this country. And 50% of doctors, 70% of lawyers come from HBCUs, and the numbers go on, and there's a lot of STEM talent, technology talent, entrepreneur talent, all of that training. And I would venture to say that probably folks in this room don't tap into those spaces as much as they could.
And something you can do in this room pretty easily. Nicole, do I see you in the back of the room? So Nicole Galicia, who started and runs the Orchid Foundation, which mentors young women at one school in New York, and I've been involved for about a decade. And we have Markayla here, who came through the program. We met when you were, and is starting at Goldman Sachs in January. Amazing. And some of you will recognize Nicole from the 4 Quentin Tarantino movies she's been in. Some of you will recognize her from Cheetah Girls, or Mayor of Kingstown, which is a dark show, but she's such a wonderful human being. And talking to Nicole about how maybe you can get involved with mentoring the young women in Orchid who are amazing might be a thing that you could do to also draw on some talent and learn a lot yourself. I'll just throw that out there. And she's right there in the corner. You can stand, Nicole, if you want, so people can see. Or not. All right. So why don't we do, Meredith, you want to do one more like really insightful, funny, warm question, and then we can.
No, all you, and then we're going to wrap and actually get to spend some quality time.
Yeah. So I'd love so we also like to do some personal background stuff. We've done a little of that, and I know, Juliet, you and I talked about your incredible passion for art. There's art in your family in a bunch of ways. You don't have to talk about art, but you certainly can. But for each of the two of you, what's one thing that you want the people in this room to know about you that doesn't come from your, what you're doing professionally? One thing you love that lights you up, that really excites you?
Well, I had mentioned earlier that I'm obsessed with my own son. So he races go-karts, and so I have become passionate about motorsport, which if anyone who has known me before my kid got into this would have been like, you do what? But yeah, I spend many hours a week at a track and watching, kids trying to carve tenths of seconds off of their time, knowing the difference of what the differences in chassis and the setups and all of those elements. I can talk pretty knowledgeably about a variety of F1 related things. It's fun. And what I like about it is that there's a technical element, there's a strategic element, and there's the competitive element. And it's a bunch of kids out there doing a really hard thing. I mean, they're driving 60 miles an hour at 7 and 8 years old. And doing it. And
Sorry, what?
yeah.
Your child is 7 doing this?
Yes.
At 60 miles an hour?
Yeah.
They wear helmets.
They do wear helmets and chest
For their whole
protectors.
bodies?
They do not wear seatbelts because it's too dangerous if they're trapped in if the cart flips over. So, yeah.
Okay.
But
Wow.
yeah, it's fun to watch kids doing a hard thing and to do it repeatedly and to push themselves to be better and better and to come off the track and just be supportive of one another and having that great community. So,
That is wild.
yeah.
All right, that's great.
But I will say he's a much better driver than I could ever be, and already, so I'm thrilled.
And we've gotten past the point where he used to tell you he didn't need to learn to read because that was not required.
Yeah,
We've
correct.
gotten
Race
past
car
that. He's a
drivers-
great reader now.
Yes. Yeah, he would tell me repeatedly that race car drivers don't go to college, so he didn't need to worry about any of that.
Excellent.
I love
Yeah.
that.
All right.
Me. So I'm risking seeming like a really horrible person because I already said that I didn't tell my employers that I had children. I am the mother of 2 children, and I'm not about to say that that's my passion, even though I really like them. And as far as I know, they love me as well. But I'll go with the art thing. I am a collector of art, specifically art of the African diaspora. I love, in particular, young Black emerging artists, but also I have in part of my collection some pieces from more classic artists that are now gone. But I focus on emerging artists because they need to eat. So I like to buy that art. And then I have a brother who's in the arts, he's in the performing arts. And so I understand the issue of the struggle of the artist. And been collecting for 30 years, and I have a son who's 28 who did all these fancy educational things and spent 2 summers working at Goldman, and he got a job at Goldman, and then 6 months in, he called me to tell me he quit. I said, don't do that. He said, I don't have any passion. I already quit before I called you. And now, and I paid cash for college. The whole thing was like a thing. And now he's getting a master's in fine arts to be an art curator in a museum, so it's my fault. So, so that's my thing. Yeah.
That's fantastic. By the way, and this sort of ties your experience together with your sociology. I almost went to grad school in sociology. I did 1 graduate coursework in sociology while I was in law school because I couldn't resist. And when I told my mother that I was majoring in sociology, she literally said, great, now I'm going to go put my head in the oven. Because you'll never have a job.
Yeah, that's fair.
Very encouraging, mother, just so we're clear about that. And it is an incredible, extraordinary art collection.
Thank you.
And thank you for sharing that, and thank you both for sharing all of this. And before Meredith wraps up, I'm just going to say, wraps up, I should really clarify that, because that other thing's not going to happen. I'm just going to say, Emily King will be performing out there, so you just got like a little taste, and there's a soundboard and other stuff. People on Zoom, no luck for you, you're going to miss that. But those of us here, we've got good wine and Emily King. So Meredith, you want to?
Yeah, thank you both for being here. This was really fun for me. Thank you all for being here, and we're going to have some drinks and snacks. So you can go home.